it really doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter that I am. And that was the first time I thought, suicide is definitely an option.
You were
Yeah.
in your boat. What your mom had left.
Yeah, she went to work.
You were
She
supposed
my
to go to
mom.
school.
Yeah.
You got shipped out the door, and
Yeah, she
you
went.
didn't go.
My mom worked in Brooklyn, so she caught the train at like 5:30 in the morning. She would make sure everything was set. My sister would make sure that I got off to school, and I left the house and I went around the block. And we had this crappy old Chris Craft boat in our backyard that was basically rotting.
The wee tree.
Yeah, the wee tree.
The wee tree.
Yeah. Oh my God. And it was up on blocks. And we used to play in it as kids. That's what we did, right? It never went in the water after, I think, probably I was 3 or 4. So it had been sitting there for years, right? And so I went around the block and I climbed into the back of this boat to hide because that's where I was going to spend my day. And I remember laying on the deck of this boat covered in leaves, right? It was fall. And I covered myself up in leaves and I laid there for hours. And it was the first time I felt like nobody's going to know where I am. Nobody is going to even pay attention to where I am. It really doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter that I am. And that was the first time I thought, suicide is definitely an option. I don't even know if I knew that word, but I knew that I didn't want to live anymore. I knew that I had been in pain. I had gained a lot of weight in that 12 months previous because of this other episode and consuming, just as much sugar as I could eat to try to soothe myself. And that was the first time that I was suicidal, that I really thought, I'm going to kill myself. And that thought became a habit. It became a pattern in my life. Whenever I experienced depression, I would always go to, this is an option. And I think in some cases that's very comforting, right? To know that there's an outlet. Not that you might not ever use it, but to know that that's an option feels powerful. But it becomes a habit, and it becomes something that you fall back on in a very sort of destructive is not the word, but negative way. It becomes this sort of out. And it's not something I ever really shared with anybody. I didn't tell my wife until we met in college. And I think a couple of months into our relationship was the first time I actually admitted that I had been suicidal in my life. And that was the first time I really had shared that information with anyone. So,
what made you not want to go to school that day? Just a kid?
Yeah, I think I'm a kid.
Had you ever skipped?
Not up until that point. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you can think back, for myself, the first time I realized that sadness was really profound was because of a song. It was Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven song. And I was about 5th or 6th grade when that song came out. And I remember feeling that really deep sadness because I knew his son had died. And so I was kind of putting that into me, like, what if I died? And then Kurt Cobain killed himself. And that was how it implanted into me. Did you know of anybody growing up that, not personally, any famous actors? Was there anything that had kind of planted that? Where'd you come up with it?
People didn't talk about dying by suicide back then, so I don't know if there were actors or famous people. I had 2 neighbors that died by suicide.
Okay.
They fell and hit their head. That's what I was told. And so, no, I didn't really know that, but I knew that I didn't want to be alive. I didn't care. I was in so much pain. And to your question about why I skipped school, looking back on it now, right, I've done parts work. I've sat with that kid, right, that 12-year-old kid, and said, what do you need now? What is happening in your world? And at the time, I didn't know this, but I do now. I was trying to seed some control in my life. I was trying to seize some control in my life, some power, because I felt powerless, that I had to go see my dad, that I had to do these things that I didn't want to do. And I think I was trying to maintain some level of control. And that's really what it was. That's why I took the day off. And I think the next step in control, if you're completely miserable, can feel like suicide. And it can feel like I am empowered to do this because I am in control of my life, right? It's a destructive outcome, obviously. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
A very temporary.
But if that's what you're thinking and that's all you know, it seems like a reasonable outcome. I also think that for me, later on in life, when I was feeling suicidal ideation, it was more about me not wanting the people in my life to be exposed to me. And that is a feeling of low self-esteem that is really hard, I think, for people to understand if they don't experience it.
It's very hard. Yeah. It's very hard to experience it too.
Yeah.
Do you have any words of advice that, when someone's feeling, you said a permanent solution to a temporary situation, because feelings come and go. They could last 5 minutes, they can last 30 minutes, and they will go, and then they can come back. Do you offer anything on that?
Yeah, so I talk to people all the time about the fact that at 61, I'm finally living happiness. And I've been living happiness for the last 20 years. I never thought a day like today was possible. And that is the best advice I could give someone is, hey, get through this. It's temporary. Temporary might be 5 years, might be 15 years. For me, it was almost 30 years. That's temporary when you think about life in totality. And so I urge people to try to understand that I have a day like today because I went through the work that I needed to get through. And that, to me, is the best possible outcome. But I know that when you're in it, it's almost impossible to see that. When you are in the throes of depression, it is almost impossible to see that that's possible. But that's what I try to urge people, is that, look, if I can be happy, if I can experience this, it's possible.
And you use a lot of tools. You've talked about tapping and parts work, and all of those are very usable for these situations whenever you're feeling less than empowered in life. Do you use these tools in those moments, or are they kind of tools that you use to prevent?
It's a little bit of both. So I have experienced some depression, some depressive episodes over the last, 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. They don't last as long as they used to because I now have the tools that I need to use, right? I have this roadmap of 10 things that I practice on a regular basis. When things go off the rails and I'm not being my best, I can go back and look at that list and say, this is what I missed. And those 10 things are really simple. And everybody has what they need. The thing that I caution people in is you can't just start doing these things, right? You can't just start doing these practices and move forward. I guess some people can, but for me, I had to go backwards to learn exactly what happened and why I was wired the way that I am so that I could understand that and then move forward. And literally, this is about going back to that 6-year-old kid that was molested and say, hey, you're safe. This is never going to happen again. And releasing that. If I hadn't done that work, that would still be happening inside of me. And so I love social media, right? I've had so many videos go viral on TikTok, and so many people connect with me and tell me that they have been suicidal, they've been depressed, their father committed suicide, whatever that is. And I think that that's a great thing, right? The mental health support community on TikTok, on Instagram, wherever, it's phenomenal. The downside is people see some videos and they self-diagnose. Yeah. They're like, oh, I know that I'm depressed. And that's not the way it works, right? You need to have a professional, you need to engage with the professional, and you need to have that person help you work through whatever it is that you need to work through.